Hey guys, here we are, the Quiggin Out MMA Podcast, and I have an incredibly special guest. I don't know if many of you know this, but the first fighter I ever interviewed when I got into MMA journalism, and now she's sitting there, and I expected a belt over your shoulder, but you have the belt, the one, the only, the current Bellator flyweight champion, Liz Girl-Rilla Carmouche. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Oh my gosh. So, like we talked about, we have not talked in 11 years. We've chatted. We've not done like an official interview. And what better time now that 4 months ago you got the gold? And I'm just talking about how does it feel to be champ? Like, how does that feel?
In all honesty, it still feels the same. I thought that we talked a little bit with Bellator post-fight, and they're like, yeah, we're going to have this huge media tour. You're going to go to television networks, radio networks. We're going to come interview and everything. That still hasn't happened. And then I've been knocking on their door, begging them for a fight. And it feels like just like before I got the belt, where it's that same thing where I'm saying, hey, I train full time. I'm ready. I'm healthy. Please give me a fight. And I feel like I'm doing that same thing. So it's still the same life. Nothing's changed for me. Nothing's any different. Winning the fight or post fight.
And that's kind of sad, actually. Here we are a long time ago. So what I thought would be kind of fun is I'm going to read some of the questions and answers that we had from 11 years ago.
Nice.
And I'm going to see how your opinion has changed, because 11 years ago, I asked you if Ronda Rousey was the future face of women's MMA. And you said they look for very cute feminine women, people like Gina Carano and Miesha Tate, who you ended up fighting. And I was there for that fight in Orlando. So that one came full circle.
There you go.
Who do you feel now is the face of women's MMA? Because I feel like obviously Ronda's kind of pushed aside, but who do you think it is now?
I think similar, just how we heard so many echoes once Gina Carano got out of the fight game. Once Strikeforce ended, we still kept hearing echoes of her name and mentioned the possibility of her coming back. I feel like those are the echoes around now. Like she's the ghost of MMA past, and she's still the talk of the town. You still hear about her, and not to talk down. I mean, she's super successful what she's doing in WWE and having her farm, raising all those animals. She, for no lack of trying, has done great outside of MMA.
Yeah.
But people keep talking about, well, she's going to come back, and she's like, no, I'm not coming back. But other people keep turning those names. It's not her. But I think right now, Amanda Nunes is probably the face of women's MMA. I think that's a name that, because she's fulfilling the role of holding a title in two divisions, because she is openly out, because she's a mom, she just hits a lot of the categories where multiple people can identify with her and connect with her, because they feel like they have something in common with her. So I think right now she's a face that anybody in MMA recognizes and knows who she is.
Absolutely. And I think that was a perfect choice, obviously. Oh.
Cats, the dogs, everybody's trying to be on the podcast right now.
Anybody watching, special guest. So if you're listening, you need to go over to the YouTube channel and check it out. But it's perfect how it was, because Amanda's done something no guy has done in MMA. And I'm saying that, and people are going to get upset, and it's defend both belts simultaneously.
Yeah.
He's constantly working, and the last Pena fight before the rematch, I didn't really think anybody was going to beat her, and I feel like she beat herself, and that's not taking anything away from Juliana. And all the stuff came out afterwards, and the rematch showed she's one of the greatest female fighters of all time. What she did to Ronda, what she did to Cyborg, Holly Holm, she beat everybody who had ever held a belt.
And going into that fight, I keep mentioning is that she to me is a true champion, because she's not the type to blame outside factors on why her performance what it needed to be to retain the belt when she lost to Pena. But the reality is she'd had COVID and wasn't fully recovered when she got sick again and messed up her knee. But she was the one who's like, I agreed to take this fight. I will take this fight. On top of raising a newborn, that is not easy. So you take those factors, but again, she's just not the type to say hey, my cardio is horrible right now. She just had the confidence. So I'll go out there and I'll still put a great performance. And I kept telling everybody, I'm like, look, if she is even 10% better than she was in her last fight, she's going to dominate Pena. And everybody's like, no, Pena. I'm like, nothing against Pena, but they're not on the same level. Amanda Nunes is a whole different beast, a whole different skill set, drive, everything. And then you saw it when she fought Pena. I wish I'd bet on the fight because I told everybody exactly what was going to happen and nobody wanted to believe me.
Isn't that how it always works? Like the times you predict the fights perfectly, it happens that way. And you're like, damn it.
No, I'm just honestly, I'm not a bettor. I always say like, oh, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to gamble and put money on stuff. And then all I can think is like, but if I lose that money, like I like guarantees like food. Food is a guarantee. Even if food is bad, you still are full from eating it. I'd rather bet on food any day of the week than anything else.
Absolutely. And I love the honesty there because I'm the same way. I'm like, I'm going to bet on this guy. It's 20-1 odds. It was the Bisping Rockhold fight. I'll never forget. I was like, I'll bet on this. And then I didn't do it because I live in Florida and we're not allowed to. And he beats him. And I was like, those odds were so good.
Podcast.
Hi, off-screen people.
My wife and my son just got home from school.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because you brought up Amanda raising her kid and you're raising your own. Like that wasn't a thing back then. You didn't have a wife back then. So like a lot has changed. So tell me about, I don't want to make you talk about the last 11 years. It's not like anybody hasn't been watching, but talk about what it's like to be, a mom fighting and, like you said, Amanda being out was huge for you. You coming out was huge for everybody. And having a platform that supported that, like, how does that feel, raising your kid in that world where you can, be the person you are?
Yeah, it's great. Just thinking that there is a world now that can offer him different insights into the many walks of life that people that go on. It's not just who we are as a couple and who we are as mothers, but there's also different people out there with all different backgrounds raising children. And so to see that especially where we live here, it's a really accepting environment where people aren't judgmental. And if they do have judgments, they just keep their mouths shut, which to me is like the best thing it can be. Like, fine, everybody has their judgments. Everybody has their inclinations, their thoughts on life. And we're supposed to. But not having to put others down because of your beliefs, that's hard to find. And we're in an environment where we can do that. And more people are speaking out on who they represent. And we're in an environment now to do that. But if you told me 11 years ago that I was going to have a 6-year-old son and I was going to be married, I would told you you're out of your mind, that there is no way that I was going to have a kid. So it's definitely a different world I live in, especially if you told me that I would have a boy and he would be sexist and believe that women are not as strong as men. Then I would definitely tell you.
I'm not laughing at that. I don't know what.
This is the kid who got his 4th stripe on his white belt because he does gi jiu-jitsu. I still do no gi. So he does the gi jiu-jitsu and he's like, hey, look, I'm better than you now. I have a black belt to your 4th kid. Your mom will blast W through the roof. And not me, but my wife. She's a wrestler. Like, that's not, no. You're wrong. Meanwhile, not to talk down this father, but it's like, of all of us, the physically weakest one is not the 2 women in raising you. It's the guy.
Ooh.
You got things wrong, but he sees things differently. And when you say like kids are born with their own personality, there are so many things where you look and we're like, you didn't learn that from us. How did you come up with this opinion? And truly, they're born with their own personalities. You can't choose so many things in this world. And he proved it to me. And that's something that, again, if you told me years ago that would happen, I'm like, no, it's definitely the environment. It's things that they learn. No, not always. Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all in that situation. And so much has happened. We talk about, the timing of everything and going back, and I'm reading through these questions and I'm seeing, like, I remember very vividly sitting outside of Starbucks, phone in one hand, recorder in the other, because I didn't want the table to get bumped. And we were talking and I was so nervous and you're like, I wish we could do this in person because it would be so much more fun. And I was like, no, I would be terrified. All that time ago, you talked about how women's divisions needed more depth. We only had 35 and 45, and we talked about how important 115 and another weight class, what is it? 125, how important that would be to females. How happy are you that you've been able to adapt to that weight class and now, reign over it, in the division.
Yeah, I'm really happy and really surprised with it. Just because I've been doing it now for almost 13 years. And if you told me that in the latter of my career is when I finally start cutting weight and go down to a smaller weight class, I wouldn't have thought it would be now. I thought that's a beginning of your career thing is when you go lighter in classes, and then as you get older, you go up in a weight class, you build more muscle, you understand things. So for me to like flip it, of course I have to do everything backwards, and I have to be like the late bloomer. That's just my life and my story for everything. It's just consistent across the board. But again, one of those surprises that if you told me that I would be succeeding in this division, I would have thought, no way. Like maybe I'll go down and it'll be later in my fight career and I'll have a few fights in a smaller division, but I'm probably not going to succeed there. It'll probably be going back up a weight class, and quite contrary, here I am at 125 and doing really well, especially in Bellator.
Yeah. And I mean, you're running through the people at Bellator, and some people will always say, different other divisions other than the UFC don't have the same caliber. I never agree with that because a fight is a fight and anything can happen. Looking at your last fight, the win over Velasquez, like that crucifix was ugly. Like that was, and I'm like, when everybody was complaining about the stoppage, I'm going, no, if I was her, I would have been tapping. Like that would have been like, you don't want to take that. And that doesn't take anything away from the fighters themselves, but
yeah,
you can only take so much damage, and
exactly.
elbows in the face in close proximity over and over and over.
Yeah, it's not like her arms were in the way and I was elbowing through her arms. No, I was elbowing directly to her face. There's only so many of those you can take that you can say is safe for the fighter.
Yeah. So going back again, so you said the best thing about fighting was the experiences meeting people. It's meeting different trainers and coaches and seeing that, especially in the women's division, there isn't a lot of animosity. I can go in there and fight with a woman and walk out of the fight and be able to talk with her and be able to hang out after. I don't feel like that's changed at all, has it?
No, I would say that for 99% of my career, that hasn't changed at all. And I think that speaks more to me than it does to the divisions. As I see more divisions open up, you see more animosity, the people that want to do the shit talking, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that over my career, I've established that that's just not who I am. It's not something I'm interested in doing. Whether I have a bad experience with a commission or an organization or a fighter, it's just not my nature. It's not what I'm looking to do. I'd rather do that in the cage. But I can say my last fight is probably the closest where I tried to be as cordial as possible after the fight. And there were shoulder checks, slamming stuff. It was a temper tantrum of sorts that I've never seen. And definitely that was probably the only fight I can say where she wouldn't have had a drink with me, whether I asked or not, let alone have that opportunity. And that's the first time that's happened to me before, which is say like winning the belt and that's when it happens. I could never have seen coming either.
No. And that sucks to hear. It really does, because knowing that 99% of the career, you've had fights that have been super close. You've had fights that should have gone your way, and you're not the fighter out there going, oh, this sucks, I don't like it. At the end of the day, it's not the other fighter's fault that the judges saw it the way they did.
Exactly.
We've been to fights where you can hear, I'll watch it later on TV, but I've been in the actual arena, and you hear things. And then during the fight, you hear something else. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I didn't hear that before. It gives you a different perspective and they're looking at it a different way. So,
yeah. And I've even had fights where it's not like I've said this, I don't think really in any interviews or podcasts, but in one of my fights, I'd broken my ankle in the fight camp. And it was a clean break. It thankfully and unthankfully, there was a chiropractor that was there visiting one of his friends. And he's like, oh, I just think you popped your ankle out. I'll go ahead and pop it back in. What really happened is he reset the bone. Right. And so he's like, all right, give it a few minutes, but the redness should go away and you should feel fine. He checks in with me. He's like, feeling any better? I'm like, no. And he's like, let me see. I'm like, I don't want you to touch it. No, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Did enough.
No,
you did enough.
It doesn't feel good. And so I felt like it obviously didn't feel good. I wrapped it up. I did a lot of things throughout the entire fight camp. And I felt like it was at least stable enough to hold through for the fight if I could just get to the fight. Backstage warming up, my ankle slips on the mat and I re-break it for what was starting to heal. And I would say
that hurts me now. Like
And so, like that had to, and again, after the fight, they're like, are you happy with your performance? Like, I'm not really happy with my performance. I know it wasn't what it could have been. I didn't tell anybody like, hey, I actually just re-broke my ankle backstage that was starting to heal, and I can barely walk on this thing. I just tried to play it off. I've had fights where I've been sick and I had a fever and I'm coughing up a lung and I'm trying to hide it from my coaches and the commission and everybody else. And whether I win or lose, there aren't excuses that are acceptable. When you agree to take the fight, you have to go in there. And I've lost fights where the fighter said they didn't know how I lost it. The owner of the organization said they didn't know how I lost it. Every single person, all the fans, all come up to me and say the same thing, like, I don't know what they saw. And I'm like, well, I don't have a boob job and my opponent did. So that's an easy one. I see where that went. And that's sad, but it's true. And that's how it went down. But again, I could have, when we saw each other backstage and she comes up to me and she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know how they saw it my way. I could have told her just to get the hell away from me. I was upset, and I was, but I looked at it as though, well, this is my lesson. At the end of the day, I let it go to the judges. I let them have an opportunity to judge it. And no matter what it is, it could be that there's a design on the outfit that catches their eye, and all they do is watch the performance of that person. They could have been a fan going into it, and so they have more connection to that one person, and they're watching one person fight rather than both opponents. And that's common. We're human beings. There's no way around that. But to me, like, when you give any opportunity, whether it's that you don't defend yourself, whether you let it go to decision, if there's an opportunity for anybody to be in a doubt and you're unpleased with the outcome, then just don't let there be a doubt. And I've had plenty of fights, and I'm not bashing them. That's not, I learned for myself, and those are my mistakes. And I've made sure, like, especially going into Bellator, learning from the mistakes I made in the UFC and never wanting that to happen again. And making sure going in there, like, no, this is not that life for me. I don't like those feelings. I don't want to go home and have to look at my 6-year-old son and my wife and tell them that I didn't do everything that I could. It's just not an option anymore.
And I think what you just did speaks to that too, because you could have been like, yeah, so when I was talking to Alexis Davis, Miesha Tate backstage, you didn't say either one of those. We all know you were thinking of it. Because again, I was there for the Tate fight, even if you weren't talking about that. And I remember watching it and going, Liz has got it. And hearing the decision and going, what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess that's what we're doing now. So, and again, it's nothing against them. And I still feel like it baffles me that we still have problems with judging. We still have issues where we have to say things like, I let it go to the judges. It's my fault. Like,
yeah.
Why is it?
In part, it's we're still going to continue to have issues with it. One, because like I said, we're humans. We all make mistakes. We all see something. You can talk to somebody 5 people that all watched a car crash, and everybody's going to see something a little bit different, a different perspective. They're standing in a different position to see it, right? Yeah. But because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. But the other problem is oftentimes the MMA commission is actually a boxing established commission that's judging MMA. Mm-hmm. And when you don't understand MMA, you're not a fan of MMA, you've never trained MMA, you don't teach it, you don't train it, there's no possibility that you could, that's like me going into football and being like, I don't understand why you're giving a flag. Like, so what? He punched him in the face. Keep going. It's football or hockey. Like, I go into hockey, I anticipate there has to be a hockey fight. And if there isn't a hockey fight, I'm like, you both lost. You both lose. This is a draw because there wasn't a hockey fight. This is why you actually come to hockey. It's not to watch the two compete. It's that. And so
we go there to watch the fight. Yeah.
I mean, it's like me going to a taekwondo match and saying that I understand one kick from another. I don't. I have no rule. I can't go to a boxing and really say that I'm subjective in there and that I understand as a professional what the boxers are doing and judge it. I don't. And in the same way, we should not have people that do not have an understanding of the sport judging the sport. It just shouldn't be that way. I mean, you're already putting flaws in there because it's humans judging things and they're going to make mistakes. When you add in an uneducated person going in there, it's not fair to the sport.
No. And it's not. And you see coaches over the years, and I brought this up before, guys like Greg Jackson, figured it out. He would just yell stuff at Cerrone, and he would make sure to yell it super loud so everybody heard it. Oh, nice kick. And it was like, he missed. Okay, yeah. That works.
Yeah, I can say that, like, if you watched Salima Leigh McFarland's fight this past weekend, one of the things that the commentators picked up on is they heard that every time that she did a kick, every time she did a punch, she went for a takedown. It was, hey, hey, super loud. And what they commentating on, which is absolutely on point, and I've learned over the years too, that as a coach, that's absolutely what you do, is you want to hype up all the judges. And if they're anticipation, if they're hearing that, they're like, oh, that was big. Even if they don't understand, they hear that, they go, okay, yeah, that was a close one.
That was good, yeah.
When like, wait, what? The punch was 5 feet away. It never landed. No, it wasn't a close call. But you learn the tricks of the trade, and that's one of them. And Jackson has it down. There are a few other coaches out there that do the same thing to help sway the judges. Yeah. And again, that's because they're humans, and it's a boxing commission. If you go to a boxing fight, they're not falling for those tricks. They understand what's really going on there, but they're judging MMA.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought up McFarland, because I saw something she said the other day, and I just wanted to stir the pot because that's what we're supposed to do.
Exactly.
No, I'm curious about that, because as teammates, she said she would love to fight you, would love for that to be her last fight, and both fight in Hawaii, where you won the belt. So super exciting for that. How do you feel about that? And I don't mean this in a sense of I want animosity. I don't want some, but we're teammates. You kind of have to, I think, not fight each other on a non-title level, but when it comes to the title, kind of feel like that separates the veil there.
Yeah, and honestly, since I have been in Bellator, we're no longer on the same team. We're still friends. Like, I mean, her last fight camp, she had to get ready. She borrowed my truck for one of the people that she flew out to be there. Like, we've cooked things for each other. She's watched my son for me. We've watched her house and her dogs and trained and stuff. So we're still friends. That hasn't gone away. But as far as teammates, it's just that's changed, and not because me moving into Bellator. Honestly, it was just me trying to advance and trying to grow in that evolution. And I didn't feel like I was capable of doing that at the gym. I didn't feel like the coaching staff could elevate me to the next level. And I felt like I was being held back because of it. And that came at a few losses in my career where, had I had the challenges and I stepped out and I branched out and did what so many other fighters do and cross-training at different gyms, I would have been able to do what I needed to in those fights. So I branched out and I found a different gym that's constantly evolving and pushing me. So as far as like what could be difficult for our coaches, that's not even an option. Before, when we were talking about it, we were like, yeah, so they'll just swap every round. They'll go to the other side to help coach and keep because that's the only way it seemed fair. Or they have to sit right it will have only cut man, no coaches, and just fight each other. It was one of those two options, and they're like, that just sounds crazy. We can't do it. Like, well, it's the only way it's fair.
Yeah, it's the only way it's fair, because.
Yeah. So as far as that, that really makes it easy and kind of eliminates a lot of possibilities as far as making any difficulties for our teams and for our fight staff. What it really comes down to after that is just her working way back up for the belt. My biggest thing, and I've said it when I was in the UFC and now in Bellator, is things should be done correctly and should be done fairly. And just like for me, for Juliana to fight for a rematch, to me, she needs to be back in the win column. And it's that simple. She wins a fight against the number 2 ranked right now, absolutely deserves a rematch. But until you work your way back up the ranks and you defeat number 3 and you defeat number 2, you have no right in my mind to fight number 1. That's just how it should be. And so, like, for me right now, I think that the person that should be next to fight me should be Kana Watanabe for a rematch. I think that I caught her early on. And one thing she showed in fighting Denise is she got caught early on, but she was able to recover. And Denise tried to put it on her, but she learned the lessons from my fight. So I certainly feel like there's been growth on her part. And she displayed just how good she did against Denise and finishing her, which I never saw coming. Mm-hmm. I thought for sure once I saw her get caught, I'm like, it's over. The fight's over. Denise is going to finish her. Denise is heavy-handed, fast, kicks like a mule. There's no way. And then I saw her go down. I'm like, okay, that was a surprise. Didn't see that one coming. So in my mind, it should be Kana next. And then for Alima, she's got to work her way back up the ranks. But if she can work her back up the ranks and fight, absolutely. Let's do it in Hawaii too. Because one, Hawaii is her hometown. I have my connection. If we can make it Japan, that would be the second thing. It'd either have to be in Hawaii or Japan for me. Now, what I would love is to fight Kana in Japan, because we can both kind of bring roots there. I don't know the possibility that the fights would ever be in Okinawa. That would be the ideal for me, is to go home. I get to fight back home, and then afterwards get to stay like a week or two, because I haven't been home since 2006. So that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Right. So if there was something we could do where either we fight, like for me, if I fight in Hawaii, that's kind of bringing it to a Lima, which if I'm still the champion at that time, it shouldn't be that way. It should be Japan. But I love Hawaii. Every time I've been there, it feels like the American version of home for me. And so that's cool for me. I'm game with that. But Japan is definitely the bucket list one. So if we could be there, even better. But I'm on a podcast.
I always love that. That's the best part of podcasts, where somebody just walks in. What are you doing?
Well, he just started school full time. He's been doing 1 day a week homeschooling. And so now it's like, get home, and he's just like, oh, I left my toys right there on the table. And I thought, I'm like, I'll come in the backyard. Everything will be quiet. It doesn't work out that way.
Listen, it's not real if somebody doesn't interrupt you, if we don't lose connection, if like
difficulty starting it.
Yeah. Well, no, that's every time. And it's so funny because I've never had that problem. But it's like every like 5 episodes, StreamYard's like, you know what? Not today.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I almost lost. I wouldn't say I lost yours, but I almost lost one of the ones I did a while back. And it was with somebody I wasn't sure I was ever going to get to talk to again. So I was like,
man, that's rough.
Please. I'm like, please don't. And we spent 2 days of trial and error. And we finally got it working. And I was like,
And, you know, there's some fighters where I know, whether it's schedule printing, whatever the circumstance happens to be, they're like a one and done. They're like, you get one chance. If this doesn't work, sorry, that's it. Good luck. Get back on the back of the list and try to work your way. I'll at least I'll keep rescheduling until we can get it done.
Well, and I love that you just said that, because you say the same thing about fighting. Like, I'm getting tired of immediate rematches. I really am, because it puts the division in this weird, limbo where, look back in the heavyweight division of the UFC a couple years back. I say a couple years. We're talking 10 years. Yeah. But it was like the same 3 guys fighting for the title over and over and over. You have the same women fighting for the title. As far as like women's 145 in the UFC, I think that should be kind of gone. I think they're only keeping it around so Amanda can still continue to defend and not have to cut as much weight when she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, not a bad way to look at it.
The reality too is she's done what very few have in the UFC, and being able to, at least for females, being able to be a dual champion, right? And then, so if you see her, the possibility for cutting down to 125, I think Amanda's a lot more big bone than we give her credit for, and I do not think that she could get down to 125.
No.
So for her to keep that. Yeah, right. 3. So if she can keep that dual championship, she has to keep that 145 division. And I think with all the success that they saw with Cyborg and her ability to build the depth for that division and talent, I think they're hoping that it'll continue, instead of people being like, I'll go down, I'll move to 135 or go to PFL and do 155 for those that don't really want to cut. Yep.
And anybody who actually wants to fight Kayla Harrison, but that's all. Listen, it's fun. It's almost not fun to watch anymore. And I don't say that as disrespect, but it's like you just go in and it was like Anderson Silva in his heyday. You went, well, I know he's gonna win. I just don't know, how it's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And when they make it out of the first round, you're like, oh my God, what happened? Like, it's still a fight.
It's like with Shevchenko. I think a lot of people are like, she's going to knock her out in the first round. I'm like, no, she kind of likes to play with her food a little bit. She's going to pick them apart. She's going to program it into the machine that she is and see every default and go, no. And the third, like, I've heard her coaches go like, okay, it's done. Finish it. And her like, cool. All right. Head kick. You've been dropping your right hand this whole time. Here's the head kick. Or you've been elevating it super high. Here's the body kick. So I wonder if Kayla will change that, just in that she'll start being like, let me play with it a little bit before I actually go in for that kill.
Yeah, I think that would be much better. I think it would be much better for PFL. I think it'd be better for her career. But at the same time, she's made millions of dollars.
Yep.
At that point, I guess she could do whatever she wants. But I like that. And you brought up another point. You heard her coaches. Did you hear that during the fight, or was that like when you're watching other fights?
When I'm watching other fights.
Okay, I was gonna say, oh man.
No, I'm pretty good at in fights listening to my coaching staff and their coaching staff. But particularly because whatever it is, it hurts my ego and gets me all riled up when I hear the other coaches be like, "You hurt her with that." I'm like, "No, they didn't. No, how dare you?" Like I can remember somebody like, "Oh, you got her with the jab." I'm like, "Her jab's here, and I parried it. How could she?" Oh, okay. And then like putting my hands down, like, "Go ahead, hit me with your jab." My coach is being like, "No, Liz."
No, don't do that.
Yeah, as Alima and my old coaches say, it's called diking up. And Alima, I can remember recording me one time being like, "Dike down, dike down." Like, yeah, okay. And I'd like put the hands back up and be like, "Okay, ego down," because I was just like, put my hands down, like, "Okay, you think the jab touched me? Go ahead, hit me with your jab now." I'm like, she's like, "No." I'm like, "All right, fine."
Oh yeah, as your coach, I'd be pissed.
Yeah, but it's just
your head back up.
Yeah, it's just me listening to the other team, and two, like I'll listen. We're like, "Okay, go ahead and dig that underhook," and I'll be like, "Nope, gonna defend it." I listen to both sides to try and like shut down the opponent, which is difficult. Only like I don't speak Portuguese, so having a Brazilian, somebody from Portugal, or having somebody from Brazil is a little bit difficult. My Spanish takes a little bit longer to translate. Japanese, like I heard all of Watanabe stuff, and I was like, "I got this. Cool. This is an easy one."
Listen, all you fighters out there, listen. Start learning other languages.
Yes.
It may help you.
It may, unless you're too busy trying to translate and you're like, too late.
Too late. Kicked in the head. It's so amazing because going through everything and looking through all this old stuff. You've fought 16 times since the last time we talked.
That's crazy.
Yeah. 2 fights in Invicta. And then I'm going to try and go the right way. And then we've got that one. I can never do this right, ever. And most people don't think about the fact that you walked out first.
Yeah.
Like, you were the first one. 2 years prior to that, we were talking about probably not going to happen. Probably, never going to happen. Ronda. And the next thing you know, you're sitting across the cage from her. Fast forward to UFC 205, you're the first one in the cage for women in New York with UFC in New York. Like, how does that feel being part of history twice over? Because you really were, and people don't give you the credit I feel like you deserve in that situation.
It's crazy because I was joking about it the other day, just telling my wife, because she was an amateur MMA fighter before her son. And since then, she's just concentrated on raising him. But she got into MMA. She'd see my fight. She's like, "I can beat her," talking about me, right? So seen me in a bar, was a little bit tipsy, decided like she could beat me up. Happen chance shows up at my gym to decide to try and learn to fight, and eventually beat me up. Go figure. So don't get it wrong. She hits like a Mack truck. So
I believe it. She's behind you right now. She's behind the camera right now.
She's waiting. She's waiting. Listen, yeah, I said it. Don't worry, honey. But I was just telling her, like, she never watched any of the tough seasons until our friend Juliana Miller was on there. Mm-hmm. She watches fights, and I'm like, wow, it's so crazy. I came up watching him to see him still fighting. She's like, I have no idea who this fighter is. Look, I'm really bad about following current MMA, but I at least know the history of where we came from. She has no clue about any of it. She saw my fight and decided she was going to start fighting MMA. That was it. One and done. And
I mean, okay. I guess it worked out for you, right?
Exactly. But so when I tell her, I'm like, it's really crazy because I got to be I was the first ever women's MMA fight. I was in the first one in the cage. I fought on the first ever Invicta. I fought on the first ever MSG card for the UFC, and the first fight of the night, first win of the night. I was the first fights to ever happen in Uruguay, first ones ever in Prague. And it's just like ends up being like first after first after first. And I started realizing, and like I went through the list, like when fights, I'm like, there's a lot of firsts on here. Maybe I should change my name from the Girl-Rilla to History Maker or the History Achiever or something like that. And it's like like trying to tell her, because I was telling my son and just explaining, he's getting at the age where he can better understand things. Mm-hmm. And he asked some stuff, and I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy telling you guys this. That like these have all been historical markers. And hey, by the way, bud, in a few years, I'm probably going to show up in your textbook. Just a heads up and a warning, may be weird for you and your friends. Like just a position I never would have thought entering into MMA that I would be any of those people and I would have fulfilled any of those roles. I mean, entering into it, I had the dream of like, yeah, if I could fight Chris Cyborg, because I thought I was a 145er to begin with, is now a 125er. And then I was like, yeah, of course the dream was to fight in the UFC, but I wasn't saying that and voicing that out loud. I didn't certainly think that was going to happen, or any of the other markers that I made happen. And so it's crazy that all of those things came into fruition, and I'm where I am today.
And I really wish they still did magazines, because I just want to bring something up. So if you could see this tiny little, this was the first time I had been published with an actual article.
Nice.
And
I think I have that one.
So going back, and it's so funny going through this, and I just want to point out to anybody who has this copy, I didn't write this "did you know" because it's wrong. It says you fought at welterweight. I'm like, I didn't know. I didn't do that. But it was a long time ago. But MMA has progressed so much further in the right direction. Shannon Knapp really took the reins on that one. And if anybody really sees the people that have come out of Invicta, yourself, Amanda Nunes, Rose Namajunas, like all these people, champion. And it's really cool to say champion next to your name. I'm not going to lie, because I know you've put in the work. You've literally never given up. You're still as jovial as before. And so many fighters, you'll see them change. You know, you went from Invicta to the UFC. You had 10 fights in the UFC. Again, 2011, tell Liz you're going to have 10 fights in the UFC.
Yeah, no.
Not happening. And then going to Bellator, where, like we were talking about before, people say that the competition changes, but I think it's more about the promotion. There are fighters in there. It's a fight. Anything could happen at any time.
Absolutely.
And I think having you at the top and saying, listen, she doesn't deserve an immediate rematch, and it's nothing personal.
Yeah.
But fights need to be this way. When I look at rankings and I see number 6 fights number 7, perfect. Number 4 fights number 5, perfect. Number 4 fights unranked guy. Now wait a minute. Why are we?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the same thing. So do you feel like that's ever something that's going to change, where it's going to move to that, or if the champions are really going to have any say in that, or do you think it's just going to be the same?
I mean, from conversations that I've had with some champions in different organizations, and all of them, is the champions do have say in the fights. I don't know how I'm different in that way, but I certainly hope that the other champions that are out there aren't looking for easy fights, and they're not looking to just stay at the top and just keep collecting a paycheck, but they're looking to challenge themselves and face the best and truly be challenged each fight that they have. But I don't think that's true for every champion. Some of them work their way up there and they're like, good, now I get to have the pick me easy fights, or they, whatever the circumstance happens to be. One thing that I respect a lot about Alima is she did so much work she built the depth of the flyweight division in Bellator.
100%.
I mean, before that, I can remember when there were women in Bellator, and then it went away for a little bit. Yep. And then she brought the flyweight division back, and there was talks of tournaments and everything. And she did such a good job with helping promote the organization, with voicing who she is a person, what she stands for, what her culture is, and advocating for her culture, advocating for women's rights, for all those things. That she did such a great job as a champion that it helped elevate that division. And I honestly feel like it's helped build up the rest of them as well. Like they're almost riding in the coattails of her, and they need, so I think that certainly helped it. And then I hope that I can now, as a champion, just show, like, let's do things as ethically as possible. Not to say that she didn't, but I want to do things as fairly as possible. And I said when I got into Bellator that I didn't, because people are like, do you think you deserve a contention right away? I'm like, no, I'm ranked in the UFC, but there are other women and other men that are fighting in Bellator that were also ranked in the UFC that aren't just automatically, cool, you were number 2 in the UFC, now you're number 2 here. That's not how that works. It's a different organization.
I mean, that would be nice, but...
Right, yeah. And I told Bellator and I told everybody, and I meant it. And I said, like, I'll work my way up through the ranks. I don't expect you guys to just give me the belt, nor do I expect for you guys to give me the easiest fight possible either. I expect myself to have to work through the ranks, and that's exactly what I did. And I feel like anybody that wants to be champion has to do the same thing. Anybody that wants to have contention for the belt needs to work their way up the ranks. And I hope that every champion does that, because it makes the organization more respectable. It makes people think that they're honest for who they are. And it's not like, oh, well, you have 1 million Instagram followers and you have an OnlyFans. So guess what? It's going to help us if you show skin, you get a title fight. That shouldn't be how it is. It shouldn't be what your following is on social media. It should be what your skill set is in fighting and what you bring to the game.
Absolutely. And that wasn't taking shots at anybody specifically. Because we are seeing a lot more of that. And then realistically, Bare Knuckle has an OnlyFans logo like on the mat. Like, it's big. It's there. Jumping to that, you've seen a lot of fighters, and we're going to bring up Paige because her fight got postponed. She said she didn't pull out. Teresa said she didn't pull out. So I'm like, it's kind of weird that you would pull the fight a couple days before when people probably flew to London and wanted to do all that.
Yeah.
But Paige has not been able to find any success. Do you think it was a bad idea for her to go to Bare Knuckle, or do you think she was looking for a payday? And I know I'm kind of stirring that pot, but you're right. There's some things where you feel like the focus has left fighting and it's pushing towards the, wrestling side of it, where it's just entertainment.
Yeah, and I think to some degrees, in all honesty, it is needed. Like, one thing that Ronda did really well is, whether that's who she was or not, is she was really good at trash talking, making hype and publicity, it being able to, and same thing with Alima. Like, she's a few days out from her fight, and there she is flying out to go support Bellator and go commentate and go coach people and go be at the venues and go do all these things. Like, her life does not stop just because she has a fight on the line, right? Yeah. And she is so good at, I just feel like Alima's a good example of how to do it correctly, right? But there are fighters that want to skip the work and they just want to, and I know fighters, I've talked to people, they're like, I want to get into fighting because I want to be famous and I want to have all these sponsors give me free stuff. Okay. You do realize you get hit all over your body as part of the fight game. There has to be a skill that supports that.
Including the face.
Including the face, yeah. I think just a lot of people just think it's going to be shortcuts to get there and not necessarily put in the work. And, and then you get a performance where they fight a fighter that's like, no, I'm a skilled fighter. I did the work. You're going to get put out bad. And I don't think that Paige moving to Bare Knuckle is necessarily a bad thing, just because, for her, she's an attractive person. So in my mind, I know it's messed up to say, but like, let the unattractive fighters go to Bare Knuckle, because if you don't have anything else to lose, but you can still do it, because I've cornered people for Bare Knuckle, and even a winning person comes out with broken hands that the insurance does not cover. The insurance does not help them fix their hands. I cornered a fighter where she destroyed her hand to this day. It's still swollen and still numb, and that was years ago. They didn't do anything for her to fix that. I've seen fighters where, they won, but they got one punch to the face and broke their orbitals. Like, you don't come out of Bare Knuckle succeeding. Even if you do a one-punch knockout, you busted your hand doing that. There's nobody winning in this equation. And the insurance isn't there to help take care of their fighters. What Bare Knuckle needs to do is understand and investing in taking care of their fighters, especially because when you have somebody like Paige and Zant that people are attracted to and they want to see, where people want to hear the storyline, they want to see her OnlyFans, they want to see the attractiveness that she has to offer, then you need to protect that attractiveness and not compromise that if that's what you want to build on. We have to be smart about that. And there has to be the paydays. And I don't know what her paydays are for Bare Knuckle. I know that she's done, I'm sure. We can speak to that. One thing I noticed with Bellator is they pay their fighters based on their rankings. And one of the things that Bellator wants to do is not take back and keep all the paychecks. Is they want to, if the show did great, they're giving back to the fighters to supplement them for that and to make sure that they're getting good money to make up for it. So if you're a number 4 ranked fighter, you're getting paid great. You can be in other organizations and be a number 4 fighter, still getting paid crap, still working a full-time job. Or you can be a number 12 fighter and not be great, but be super attractive, have tons of followers, and all of a sudden you're getting paid a lot more, bigger paychecks. And I see both sides of it. I see the side where if you have to know the fighter. I mean, if you're walking down the street and somebody doesn't know who you are, you could be number whatever in the world, but if they don't know who you are and they're not going to tune into your fight because they don't know who you are, it doesn't matter the performance that you put on. If they're not invested, it's more for us, and I increasingly see that now, and I have over the years, is we're not just fighters. In the beginning, I felt like we could just be fighters. Our storyline and who we were, none of that mattered. Just go out there and put on the fight. That's not the MMA world anymore. Social media has eradicated that possibility. Yeah. They want to know who we are. They want to be connected. They want to invest in their fighter, not only for the skill set that they offer, but because they have connected with them as people. There's something, whether they want to lose, they want them to lose, or they want them to win. You want to either play the good guy or the bad guy. And more often than not, the bad guy gets the better paychecks because people want to see them lose and they tune in for that fight.
Yeah. And I'll just say McNugget because I don't like giving him the actual name, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's one of those people where it's like he was a skill fighter. I'm not taking anything away from that. But he did something that they needed. They needed somebody to be brash. They needed to be that. I still have my own opinions that are not kindly taken to about the whole Dolly incident with the bus, but that is a whole nother thing. Yeah. I don't believe that for a second, but okay. That's my conspiracy theorist moment. But you're right. It's a matter of, are you going to bring the fans? Are you going to put, asses in seats, the oldest saying they have? Or are you going to do this the right way? And I like what you said about Bellator paying, the fighters accordingly. Because I feel like a lot, like you said, if people don't want to put in the work, they're like, well, I'm only getting this much. And it's really hard for a fighter to get paid 10-10 to show, 10 to show, 10 to win, and have a full-time job. But then you're seeing people where they have the job, it takes a while to get there. So I feel like we've come a long way. And I'm sure more than anybody what it was like to, in the beginning, because I can't imagine the paydays were,
more than a full-time job. And I can remember like one of my fights, I came back and I'd been saving for 6 years to buy a new truck. And I traded in my car and I was able to finally get a truck, and everybody's like, wow, that must have been a big payday. Like, I got paid 10 and 10. Half of that went to taxes. Yep. I had to pay 20% to my management. I had to then also pay for all the fight equipment. If you do the work for 3 months of training, 8 hours a day, I got paid $4 an hour. What part of payday do you guys think? And that's what people miss out on, is they're not taking into account, we still have to pay taxes. We have to pay our management team. Yeah. We have to, and then each commission, whatever state we go in, they take a percentage that we also have to pay to that state. So, okay, cool. You got paid $50,000. Cut that in half. And then you have to break that down for a 3-month fight camp of a full-time job. That's not real money. If somebody said hey, I want you up front to put in 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, also commuting to all these sessions, pay for all your own gear, but we'll pay you at the end of it $50,000. To be like, the hell with you. No way. That's not enough money. Nobody would
go to their job for 3 months and be like, we're going to pay you at the end of the 3 months. It's going to be a lot, but we're not going to tell you about all the other stuff. And that's still something that's a problem, because I feel like, I know I didn't watch the whole video, so I'm not going to comment in it, about Dana talking about fighters are getting paid what they're worth. And I don't believe that. And I'll watch the rest of it. If there's anything in there that contradicts what I just said, I'll take it back. But I don't think I have to, because it's 20 years later and we're still having talks about fighter pay. We're having
unionizing.
We're having Luke Rockhold, Ngannou, going off on people about fighter pay. And I'm like, that's not a good look. It's really not a good look. Why doesn't somebody do something about it? But at the end of the day, they're right. Boxers get paid millions, and we all know there's some shady stuff going on in the background. But again, it might be millions, but then they're, like you said, they're taxed. Management, commission, gear, whatever it is. It doesn't come out to as much as we really think. So a payday is one thing. And for fighters, you're at a tenth of that.
Yeah. And you look at them, than MMA. And I mean, I can remember a boxer. I was already established in fighting. I was ranked in the top 10. I'd been doing it a few years. He was entering into his first pro boxing bout after having an amateur career. And he was already getting paid entry into his pro boxing debut more than I was, being ranked, I don't know, I think I was number 4 at the time, and been in the game for 6 years prior to that. And when he told me, I was like, he's like, yeah, I'm not really happy with it. This is all we're paying me. They're like, what do you mean that's all they're paying you? You and I are getting paid the same thing. And I've been doing this significantly longer than you have. You're not even ranked. Like, this is insane. So yeah, but at the same time, like, I love MMA. So I obviously I haven't been in this sport as long as I have, just looking for the paydays, right? Because I'd be in the wrong sport. I would have switched over to boxing. So for some people, when I hear bare knuckle boxing, which my wife vetoed immediately, but boxing.
Okay, I'll catch you real quick. Without her veto, would you want to do it?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
So during COVID, I was no longer in the UFC. I got signed to Bellator, and Bellator was like, "Hey, we don't know when we're going to open back up and start having fights again." And I was like, okay, well, for one, I get antsy and I lose my mind not fighting. Like, I need to fight. Yeah. Like, this whole underground training that's going on because of COVID and in California, not fun, not enjoying that, but at least I still get to train. Like, that's fine. It's minimalist. But I look forward to fighting. That's what I love to do. And then two, like, as much as it's not what pays my bill, it certainly helps supplement them. And when I was owning and operating a gym and I can no longer work and open my gym anymore during COVID, and I don't have fights, I'm like, I'm not making any money. There's no money. There's no money streaming in. There's no money whatsoever. I need to do something. And I saw that bare knuckle boxing was out there. And I was like, I think I'm going to take a bare knuckle boxing bout. She's like, the hell you are. No, I don't care if they're paying you $50,000. You're not doing bare knuckle boxing. I'm like, it's $50,000. Like, if it's $50,000, she's like, no, absolutely not.
And I think that's funny because the underground training regimen, I think, is the best part you brought up, because I'm in Florida and it was like, it got bad here too, but we were still training in the gi while wearing a mask. It's not fun.
No.
And it doesn't work, because as soon as somebody pushes up on your face, the mask goes flying, and we were like, yeah, whatever. Like, we had no idea.
Or the sweat. I felt like I was getting waterboarded with my mask. We had all the doors closed. We had cardboard covering up the windows so nobody knew. And we're sparring because some people were at different organizations and potentially had fights coming up. So we're still sparring, but with face masks on in case the police happen to come in. And we're like, I'm drowning in my sweat and my mask is going up my nose and covering my mouth. And I'm dying a little bit here. It's not fun.
You go to pull the gi across the face and it takes the mask and you have to stop and you're like, come here. Okay. I thought I was a genius because I bought one that had plastic air holes. You know what happens when plastic air holes get pushed into your face? I do. You talk about people see you fight and they say, "Oh, I'm gonna go do that." They just think it's something like that. And for me, I started watching MMA in like 2008, so I was way late to the game. But I did all the research because I fell in love with it. And I remember watching fights on the ground, and I go, "Get up, get up!" And I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, why isn't this working? So I went in, I trained a little bit, and I got put in those same positions, and I went, "Oh, that's why." That's why.
It's a light bulb moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So in 2019, I finally got to a place where I'm like, you know what? I've got a good job now. I can go to the gym. They're not going to be upset if I show up with a black eye. I mean, I don't know if they will, but and I started training, so I've got 2 stripes on my blue belt. I'm going to keep talking about it.
Congratulations.
But for me, being put in those positions, I go, okay, that's why they're not getting up, dummy.
Yeah, and then add strikes to that is a whole different game.
Oh no. We've talked about this on the show, and since you've never been privy to this story, we're gonna talk about it. I've thrown 2 punches in my life. One missed. The second one, as soon as it got here, it literally opened before it hit him. And I was in like high school, and I just looked at him, and I was like, I looked at my hand, and I said, "Well, I guess you're not worth it." And I sat back down like a psychopath. And I look back on that, and I was like, anybody who saw that was probably like, "What just happened?" And I'm sitting there going, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't have to fight, because I don't know what would have happened after the first punch."
Yeah.
And people look at MMA, oh, it's so violent, it's so this, but it's really become a lot more technical over the years. It's not as wild and crazy unless you're Michelle Pereira and you do backflips in the middle of your fight, because why not?
Why not?
We're gonna pull up the 11 years ago taco again. What is the worst thing about fighting? And you had said the worst thing is some of the stress that was involved with the beginning aspects of getting involved in the sport. It seemed like I was focusing more of my attention and energy into finding sponsors and trying to get the money together just to get a fight and worrying about that. The stress involved is the worst, even having to worry about photo shoots. Here I am trying to reassure my mom that everything is okay. Don't worry about me and having to put down the phone and go do a photo shoot. I'd rather just fight and not have to worry about television and pictures. That is perfect for what you said at the beginning, where you're like, I'm supposed to be on this media tour, and I'm not.
And like I said, over the years, I understand the importance of doing those things and having to do the media tours, but I still stand by that. I'm a fighter. I'd much rather just go in. Like when we had the COVID days where we just walked in, we fought and we left. It was amazing. I loved it. I know for so many people, it destroyed their fight game. They did not know that everything they were was invested into the crowd, into all the hype going into it, all the media tour and stuff, that like they were so used to that process and enjoyed it that they needed that for the fight. And for me, like, no, I just want to go fight. If I can go in there, I'm there 30 minutes before I'm supposed to fight and then just leave. I don't have to do any extra stuff. Yes. Yeah. Please, all day long. And the little COVID area fighting, I was definitely like, this is great. This is the life. I hope this continues. This is perfect. I don't enjoy the aspect where I can't stay and get to like visit the areas I get to see because of the COVID restrictions, but everything else, amazing. Because all I did, like COVID, I just sat in my room, I watched TV, I read books, I just relaxed, I stretched, I did little in-room workouts. It was great. I didn't have to see anybody. It was amazing.
So what you're saying is you haven't changed at all.
Exactly, pretty much.
And I think that speaks to why your career has lasted as long as it has, because, I'm going to bring up, 38, and you're looking better than you did 5 years ago. You're looking better than you did. Do you attribute that to the change in family life? Is it the change in finding the weight class that was right for you? Or has it just been years of culminating all this stuff to finally find exactly what's working for you and what's working well? And your cat really just wants to be with you so bad.
Well, don't get it wrong. He's just a little whore when it comes to attention. Anybody and everybody. My wife apparently closed the door. So he's like, I'll stay out here with you. You're available. It's fine.
Yeah. You're right here with me.
Yeah. I contribute it to all those factors. I do think that 125 in so many ways is a great weight class for me. And there's some sick, twisted part of my brain that feels like it's not a real fight if I don't actually cut weight for it. So cutting to 125 makes sense, which it doesn't. I think having a wife that supports it, and when I come home, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I don't feel like doing the sauna. I don't feel like filling up the ice bath and jumping in and doing my nighttime cardio. She's like, go. There's no reason for you to sit down. Just go. I'm like, damn it, I have no choice. Oh, okay. And then answering to my son, like, he doesn't care about fighting at all. We try to get him to watch my fights, and he's like, whatever. I don't mind. But he's like, you better not lose this fight. He doesn't care if I win. Like, whatever. That's not care that.
But you better not lose.
But you better not lose. Yeah. Don't you lose. Yeah. And then I think too, it's prioritizing myself. I think in the beginning of my fight career, I didn't prioritize myself. In all honesty, it didn't even supplement my income. Some of my fights in the beginning, I paid to fight. That's how much it cost me to do my medicals. That's how much it cost me to pay for my gear, travel to training practices, all that. So for me in the beginning, it was stressful because every time is like, I don't know if I'm going to have the paycheck this time to pay for rent. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford gas. Like, I'm going to have to ride my bicycle to the gym, and it's only freeways. So this is going to be really interesting, you know? And then I finally got to a point where at least fighting was supplementing my income, and it was additional. It helped pay for other bills and help contribute. And I wasn't stressing about making bills, but I could not give up my full-time job. That wasn't even an option. You know, my full-time job is what paid for my health insurance, and it paid for some of my bills, but I'm in San Diego, so rent's ridiculously expensive, you know? And so fighting became a point where at least things started to teeter, and I started to go from where I wasn't paying to fight, and it wasn't costing me money to fight. Mm-hmm. It went from a point where I paid for fight, it cost me money. I was literally out of my pocket losing money every fight. And then it came to a point where I wasn't making money, I was breaking even. And then to a point where, okay, I'm supplementing, I'm making a little bit of money. I've made a few $100s. Oh, we finally made a few $1,000s, but it wasn't what I could rely on to live on. And then I started to understand that all the prioritizing, trying to have a job and to do all these things and just be in the fight was coming at the cost of my body. And I'm like, I love this sport, and if I want to continue in it, I have to prioritize taking care of my body. Because whether I'm fighting or not, what's going to be with me when the lights go off, what's going to be with me 10 years, 20, however it happens to be down the road, is going to be my body. And if I don't do everything necessary to take care of it and to keep it as healthy as possible, 10, 20, 30 is really going to hurt down the road. And it's going to cost it more surgeries. So I started doing massage and started to understand the different types of massage that you actually need. Because I was just going to like the cheapest ones you could get. I'm like, I don't understand when people say get massages. All I do is pass out and I come out of it, and all the aches and pains I had are still there. Nothing's changed.
They feel a little different. They feel like they've shifted now.
not even that. That was a stretch. And then I finally found a massage therapist that made me almost want to tap out and cry on the table. And I was just trying to, like, if I can just make it through this session and survive, I'll be alive at the end of this. And then I got off the table and I was like, hey, that doesn't hurt. I can move my neck and move my arms. This is amazing. So understanding, like, doing research into myself, that was really what changes. Before, I didn't prioritize having the time to invest in myself. And then I started to realize, like, my coaches, as much as they want to be there for me and they want to support me, they're not looking into the growth of MMA as a sport and understanding how things are changing. They're not looking into the dietary changes and what can benefit different body types, women from men, all the different new health benefits that are out there that can help people stay healthier. They're not researching that. And the only person that's going to make that research and that investment is myself. So then I started making sure that, okay, every time I do a cardio session, I'm reading up on all the new things that are peer-reviewed articles by MDs, PhDs that are saying, like, these new studies are yielding these results. And reading up all these books and looking up everything and realizing there's so much out there that I can do to help myself. And one of the big ones was stem cell. And I feel like in the past, because I did that a year and a half ago, I think, a year ago, I feel like that's been a huge one that's helped a lot. I mean, even my wife had said this last fight camp against Velasquez ended up being a 9-month fight camp. They told me, like, hey, you'll potentially have a fight on April. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, April's next month. What's going to happen? They're like, next month. Okay, cool. Stay in camp. You have to be in prime shape. Sorry, next month. And it just kept coming. So finally, I'm like, hey guys, we're on 6 months now of training, as if my fight is going to be next month. You know, when's it actually going to be? And then finally getting that fight. And if you told me, like, endure a 9-month fight camp at that intensity and that level, there's no way I would have been able to do it without stem cell. And I've noticed just my body, just healing time, everything, and doing all the recovery stuff, that's what's helped change everything in my game. Having a support system there that's encouraging me to go do this stuff, and having coaches. My new coach, not new coach, we've been together for a few years now, since I've been in Bellator. Yeah. But Charles Martinez, he's big on evolution and growth. This is a guy who, like, every other weekend goes to different seminars and different forms of martial arts to bring it back to the fight team to be like, this is what I learned. See if you can use it. If you can't, that's fine. And where I tell him, like, hey, I'm going to go train with this coach, you know, over here. And he's like, that's great. If there's something you take away from it, can you bring it back and show us? up until that point, I've never met a coach where I'm like, I want to go learn this. Like, no, that's not going to work. It's stupid, or don't waste your time, or you're not being loyal to your team, and A, B, C, and D. And that's not him at all. And I think because of that, you can see that reflection in my performance in Bellator. And then having an organization that's not over stressing me with all this media stuff, combined, those three factors have really helped to keep my success where it's at this last few years.
And that was the best answer you could have given, because you're absolutely right. Like, things had to change, and any coach, I feel, even not being a fighter, and this may piss off some coaches, if a coach isn't actively okay with the cross training aspect, that it may be time to shift on, and that's going to upset a lot of people. But you're going to see different things. You're going to feel a different way. You're going to train a different way. You're going to recover a different way. Like, everything's going to change for you. So.
Yeah, even just training with the same body types. I mean, it came to a point where I had basically, he's just going to keep coming in. I basically like had everyone's technique programmed in, and I knew their movements. And I was like, okay, she bobbled her head twice. She's about to throw a right head kick. They did this. They're going to try and shoot him for a double leg. And you start to memorize what your training partners are capable of. And even if you have a new coach that's brought in, you need different bodies that can mimic certain things, because everybody's capable of different things. You know, like, okay, cool. So this fight camp, my main training partner is 5'4", but my opponent is 5'10". That's not really going to work that well, you know? No. And you have to have coaches that are willing to work with you and allow you to grow and just want to see your success. Yeah. And sometimes people are just so afraid that you going to another gym means that you're going to leave them, that they're not willing to, they're going to inhibit that and hold you back from it. Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I'm going to cut it, because we got to save some for the next time, because there's got to be a next time, and we're not going to make it, 11 years.
Although you're fighting in 11 years and you're still like, we might need to talk about that.
Maybe.
Yeah. I like saving this point, and this is not a direct shot at any big organization at all, but the part where you get to talk about who you're thankful for, coaches, sponsors, all that stuff, because we know there's some places where you're not allowed to talk about that. So with that being said, who would you like to thank? Like, who are the people that are getting you through these camps day in and day out, and helping, support your dream as champion?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that my wife is one of those big people advocating for me and going out there for me. And even when it comes to like sponsorship, a lot of it is still seeking out sponsorships on my own. I have to, who's going to ask more and want more than me myself? And my wife sometimes will be like, oh, I'm really nervous to ask them. And she'll go for me, or she's there encouraging me, sitting next to me while I'm doing the sauna and talking to me, because I have like the little personal one. So she'll sit right next to me and talk to me, or, like watching me suffer during the ice bath, like, you're doing great.
Oh, I was going to say the ice bath. Yeah.
And she's there encouraging in the belief that I was going to be a champion and constantly telling me. So I think that she goes without questions being like the top person in my corner. Second to that would be Charles Martinez. He's the coach who, one, just seems to know the right things to say to make me confident in myself. And really, that's what it's been, more so than somebody that adaptive-wise can offer so much in my fight camp and trust me and encourage me to go out. But it's also just the confidence that he is able to exhibit to me, and the phrasing of the things that he says that helps me to be able to go out there and perform. But like I said, having that coach where watching him constantly try and grow only encourages everybody around him that they want to. They're like, yeah, I'm studying this instructional, I'm going here. And so he's the second person I would say who has helped me be where I am now and is constantly in my corner as well. And then, of course, I've had like some great sponsors that have been here. Like I have Blue Cube Baths that have been able to hook me up with that ice bath. So instead of me going out every day and buying 6 bags of 20-pound bags of ice and just not doing it right, I now have a fancy, really pretty one that regulates it all right. I got sheath underwear for my underwear sponsor. Defense Soap has been, I think, my longest sponsor for years now, and has kept me free of getting any of the nasty, like ringworm, all the mat grum, keep me smelling good, keep me healthy. They keep my kid healthy, my dog's healthy. We use it on everybody. I think, and of course, I mean, my family, my mom's been there too, been in my corner, just supporting me in a sport that she does not believe in. at all, but finally has been able to kind of turn from that non-violent hippie mode to at moments telling me to go fuck the girls up and to beat the crap out of them, which is a huge jump for her. So to hear the change, yeah.
Well, and even before 11 years ago, your mom was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you sure you want to do this?" And I'm glad you stuck with it. I'm sure she is too. Like you said, she's gotten past the hippie nonviolence. I think you said
just a little bit. She has her moments. There's definitely some of the opponents where she's like, "I want you to hurt this girl. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need you to go hurt her." I'm like, "Oh, okay, mom."
Like, okay, mom. Well, on our end, I just like to give shout outs. And a lot of the times, if people don't know, most of the sponsors I have for the show, they're friends with small businesses, people that I want to support. La Barba Cubana for the beard. When I do have a beard, I actually had to cut it because we did Comic-Con. And if you watch Stranger Things, I did Hopper. So you understand why that happened.
Nice.
We've got Tim Makes Knives on Instagram, Fat Boy Jiu-Jitsu, Berto's Bake Shop. All places that if you're in Florida, as far as Berto's Bake Shop, if you're in Orlando, definitely hit her up. Some of the best food. And if you're on vacation, not cutting weight for a fight, probably a good idea.
Perfect.
Anybody can check out the Quiggin Out MMA podcast merch, but on behalf of myself, Combat Press, and I'm going to give a special shout out to Ultimate MMA Magazine, which is no longer with us. It was the reason that I got the chance to talk to you. They believed in me, and you gave me that first chance, and I will never forget that because I'm trying not to get all emotional in it, but really, I remember that call, and I will never forget something you said to me. You said, "There's nothing better in life than walking into a cafe with an AK-47 strapped to your back and a knife in your belt." And you were talking about being overseas and being in the military. And I just remember being like, this woman's crazy. Like, but I am thankful for that because here we are 11 years later. We're having this conversation. And, it was nice to be able to catch up. And it's nice to be able to say Bellator's flyweight champion, Liz Carmouche. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Hey guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe, little bell, keep you up to date on all things Quiggin Out. Thanks again.